Hey everybody, and welcome to Slasher Quest, the show where I take you on my journey through the 1980s slasher movie catalog, one film at a time. Continuing on here, we're staying in the 80s, going to stay in the early 80s. We're going to talk about The Burning from 1981, one of my favorite slasher movies, and probably one of the best that doesn't have a sequel or a remake. It fits right in with that summer theme. Been feeling the summer slashers lately with the season change and all that. So, without further ado, let's get into it. So, 1981's The Burning. It is directed by Tony Malum, and the plot for this one is a former summer camp caretaker, horribly burned from a prank gone wrong, lurks around an upstate New York summer camp bent on killing the teenagers responsible for his disfigurement. It's this movie is one of my favorite, like little lesser known slasher movies. It's getting a lot of recognition lately. And I mean, the cast has a lot to do with that. I mean, I'll just get right into the cast here. We got Jason Alexander, aka George from Seinfeld, in a very early role. Like he's thin and he's got a full head of hair, but he's got a lot of those George Costanza mannerisms, which are just kind of funny to watch. We got Brian Backer, who was Mark Ratner in Fast Times at Ridgemont High. He kind of plays like the awkward guy that everybody picks on. We got Leah Ayres, who was probably best known as Janice in Bloodsport, Van Damme's girlfriend. She's got a role in this. We got Fisher Stevens. He's been in a lot of things. Definitely like a guy you'd recognize once you see him. And Holly Hunter in a very early role as well. She's known for quite a bit of things as well. But just this cast is just crazy to think about. Another thing that's kind of crazy to think about is this is the technically like the first Weinstein movie. It was made by Miramax, and I mean, not to get into the stuff of the Weinsteins, so we're not going to focus on that. We're focusing on the slasher movie that it is, and this is a good one, and it's early '80s. Like I've said before, early '80s, like they focus more on character development and suspense, and this one is right up there too. Also, we get Tom Savini doing the special effects, and he actually passed on Friday the 13th Part 2 to do this movie. Many people see this as like a Friday the 13th kind of like ripoff, and it does share some similarities. I mean, it's a camp slasher with a disfigured killer taking out counselors and campers one by one. But a lot of people don't realize that they had the script for this movie before Friday the 13th. Friday the 13th kind of just fell together. It was an idea. Sean Cunningham wanted to do a rip on Halloween and try to capitalize the popularity of that. And he had the title of Friday the 13th and didn't even have a story written when he presented it. So The Burning was written before this, but didn't come out until after Friday the 13th. So I don't think I think it was just kind of coincidence how similar they are. And, this came out around the time as Friday the 13th Part 2, which is one of my favorite Friday the 13th movies, and it does have some similarities there as well. The killer in this one, we get a guy named Cropsey. The movie starts off with these campers like playing a prank on the like the groundskeeper guy. They talk about how really nobody liked him and he was kind of a jerk and everything. So they wanted to play this prank on him and scare him. And the prank is really bizarre. Like it's a skull that they lit candles in the eyes, and like, where did you guys get this skull? Because it's like covered in dirt and worms. Like, did you dig up somebody's corpse for this? Because it looked pretty real. I don't I don't know if that was like the best choice because it makes you think of that, and it doesn't look like something that a teenage kid would be able to make. Obviously Savini probably made this, and it is way too realistic for something like that. So anyway, like Cropsey wakes up and he freaks out when he sees it. He kicks it, and it ends up like setting his blanket on fire, which like engulfs him in flames, and he's running out of the cabin he's in, and he ends up getting burned like super bad. And then we get like flash forward a few years, the typical slasher, I don't remember the amount of time, but it's usually like 5 years later. They show he's like in the hospital, and like this one guy's talking about, like, this nurse is saying how burned up he is, and he's like, "Oh, you got to see this guy, like he's a freak." And the guys are just terrified of what he looks like now, so it's obviously he looks terrible. He ends up getting like out of the hospital, and he just instantly like starts going for like murder. But it's funny because like the first thing he does is he walks out and he picks up a prostitute, and she's like, "Oh, why don't you take your hat off and stay a while?" He takes his hat off, and she's like just disgusted by what he looks like, and she tells him like to leave and everything, and it pisses him off. So he grabs a pair of scissors and like stabs her in the stomach. And I think they got like the frumpiest looking prostitute. So I mean, to me, that's kind of realistic because of the area he was in. It was like really dingy. Uh, Kind of just it reminds me of like grimy 70s, early 80s New York movies like Angel or Avenging Angel, things like that. But like this grimy like area of the city where he picks up this fugly prostitute and kills her. And then from there we get a shot of like the campers and everything, and they're playing baseball, just like sleepaway camp. And Cropsy's watching them, and they got like this cool effect on the camera where they actually like put Vaseline on the lens to make it kind of like cloudy. And it kind of works with Cropsy because he was caught on fire, so obviously like his vision is probably going to be a little damaged. So that's kind of a cool effect that they added for the stalking camera. We get to meet some of the campers, and we get George Costanza. I always just call him George Costanza. I think his name's Dave in this. He's kind of like the jokester, and he's like the guy that has like all the hookups and stuff. They show him in a scene like giving other characters like playboys and hustlers and condoms and things like that. And then we get Mark Ratner from Fast Times, who I think his name is like Arnold or something like that, or Alfred in this. So like the characters are well done, but I'm just terrible with names. I'm going to get the names wrong, and especially if it's someone I recognize from something else, I'm always just going to refer to him as this other character. But he's kind of like this loner, pervy guy who's like spying on the girls, and he gets picked on by like a lot of the bullies and stuff. And the main bully is this big, like, muscle-bound meathead guy with a thick, like, New York accent, named Glazer. And he's your stereotypical, like, alpha douche, and he's kind of like he's kind of a pervert, and like tries to force himself on his girlfriend Sally all the time, and he's constantly just begging for it. Um, it's your typical early '80s uh teen fare. So, it just kind of goes from there, and we get like Cropsy taking out these campers one by one. There's quite a few kills in this, and they're all extremely well done. It's a Savini special effects movie, so you know what to expect. We get Karen. She gets her throat slit with hedge trimmers. So there's quite a few that happen in like probably the most iconic scene of the movie. Eddie's is one of them. There's a scene where someone takes their canoes when they go on a rafting trip, and they're trying to get back, so they make this raft out of wood, and they come across one of their canoes. They're like, "Oh, there's one over there, let's go get it." And they slowly go up to the canoe, and they're like paddling their raft, getting closer and closer and closer. And then when somebody reaches for it, like Cropsy pops out of nowhere with like these trimmers over his head, and he lays waste to like 5 people. Like I said, Eddie, he gets stabbed in the throat. We get Woodstock, who's Fisher Stevens' character. He gets his fingers cut off, and that's like super intense. And he ends up getting his throat slit as well. We get Fish, a character. He gets his chest cut open with the trimmers. The Barbara gets stabbed in the stomach with the trimmers, and she falls off the raft into the water. Diane gets her forehead like slit way open with the trimmers as well. That one always cracks me up because like, would that kill someone? Because she dies like instantly, and it's not like he like plowed him into her head and into her brain. He kind of just like swipes it across her, it slits her forehead open, and she collapses, and blood just pools out. Like, it would be a bloody mess, no doubt, but I think it would probably take a while for someone to bleed out from that. uh, and then we get Sally and Glazer are like off, like banging in the woods, and this Glazer dude he's so incredibly full of himself and thinks he's like the baddest man on the planet. But when him and Sally do it, he literally lasts like 15 seconds. And then he spends like probably 5-10 seconds apologizing to her, like, oh, I'm sorry, like, I don't know what's going on. And she's like, is that it? And it's so funny. They end up getting both killed as well. Sally gets killed with the trimmers, and then Glazer gets stabbed in the neck with the trimmers. And he fights off for a while, and that one's pretty gruesome as well. I mean, you kind of expect Glazer to like fight him off a little bit because he is a big, like, strong dude. There's a lot of funny scenes in this movie. I'll get into that. The whole Glazer lesson, like 10-15 seconds, is one of them. But I'll get to the ending here. So the ending, we got Alfred. See, I have to think about his name. I just keep thinking Mark Ratner. Alfred ends up seeing Cropsy. He sees him earlier in a film too, but he just kind of chalks it up to like his imagination. But he actually sees Cropsy kill Glazer and Sally. He goes back to warn like the main counselor guy about what's going on, and then he gets chased by Cropsy, and they end up in this old like mine or something like that. It's like this old shack in the middle of the woods. Cropsy's coming after Alfred, and like the main guy goes to save him. We get a fight for a little while, and then like they light Cropsy. Cropsy's got like a blowtorch or like a fire, like a flamethrower, and he's like trying to light them on fire. He ends up getting like knocked down, and then he gets an axe in the forehead. It's like buried into his head, and he gets lit on fire, and that's how Cropsy kind of meets his end. Before that, he gets the hedge trimmers like stabbed in his back too. So Cropsy gets jacked up in this movie, and I guess that's probably a good thing. Then there was no sequel or remake to this. Did this movie deserve a sequel? Yeah, probably. Especially if movies like Sorority House Massacre got 2 sequels. Nothing against Sorority House Massacre. I enjoy it. I mean, I own it on VHS. I used to have it on Betamax too. I sold that for whatever reason. But as good as those movies are, did they deserve 2 sequels? No, like not at all. But this one, I think, really deserved one. And we talked about a movie kind of similar to this as The Prowler. Also probably deserved a sequel. My Bloody Valentine probably deserved a sequel. And those are like the 3 best standalone slashers from the 80s that I can think of. There's a couple from the early 90s. One of them's being Popcorn, which I'll probably cover on here sometime because I love Popcorn. It's way overlooked, and now that one is on Shudder, and I think more people are giving it some recognition, which is nice to see. So like I said, there's a lot of funny things that happen in this movie. Some interesting choices, I guess. In the baseball scene, we see Sally like hitting the ball, and she runs, and she has a thin t-shirt on and no bra, and the camera like pretty much zooms in on her chest, and like her boobs are just bouncing everywhere, and it just cracks me up. I was like, how much of a perv was the dude that shot this movie? Like, was this planned, or was it just something where he's like, oh yeah, and they're like, oh man, it's the only footage we have, we don't have very much money to make this movie, so let's just leave it in there. And there's other times too where they zoom in on girls' butts in the baseball scene, and it's complete ridiculousness. I mean, Friday 13th Part 2 has a scene too where they zoom in on the girl's butt, and that's really reminiscent here. Some of the stuff with Jason Alexander's character, where they're getting back at Glazer and they shoot him in the butt with a like a pea shooter gun, some kind of BB gun or something, I don't know, but that was hilarious as well. Just some of the hijinks. It's kind of reminiscent of Sleepaway Camp, where they have some of these funny moments where you could tell it was just like teenage fun and pranks and everything. That was kind of fun to see, and that really adds another level to this movie to make it I don't know, more approachable and more memorable. Because there's so many slashers that just follow the same formula, but they don't take the time to do the little things that make you actually care about what's going on. And character development is a huge thing that gets overlooked quite a bit. Last time when I talked about Scream, that was one of those movies that didn't develop any characters whatsoever. Um, and this one, even like the small characters, like there's this girl named Tiger. They all have weird names in this movie too, by the way. there's a there's this girl named Tiger that she has like a few quirky lines and stuff too, so you get to see some of her personality brought out. Uh, we get a couple, like I said, pervs in this. You get Alfred, but they're like different kinds of pervs. So he's like the shy, like I like girls, but I don't know how to approach them kind of thing. And then you get Glazer, who's more of like the, I don't know, like the frat boy d bag jock guy who's very forceful and like almost comes close to like assaulting Sally, and like kind of, I don't know, strong arms her into doing what he wants, which is kind of uncomfortable knowing the whole Harvey Weinstein thing and that he was involved with this. And then we get Eddie, who is one of those guys where he's like tries to force himself on Karen and she pushes him away, and then he just like belittles her for it. Like he's just a complete jerk. And you're happy to see him like get the shears in the throat. Um, a few more things I got about this movie here. So the climax, like I said, it was shot like in a mine. That was just a random like copper mine that they found out in the woods. It's extremely creepy looking, and is almost like you couldn't have made a better set for the ending. And they were just so lucky that they found it. And I feel like there was a lot of the things of this movie that things just kind of fell together and worked well. It's kind of a shame that this movie didn't get the big recognition that it deserves. I mean, it kind of is now. It's had Shout Factory Blu-ray release. It's had DVD releases, T-shirts, and that kind of stuff. And then there's a poster that someone made that is really awesome. It's got like Cropsy with the shears and like a river of blood with the rafts on it. It's so cool looking. Um, I'm happy this movie's getting some recognition now. And the first time I heard about it was my dad was watching the IFC channel, and that was the first time I ever heard about it. And he was telling me, he's like, "Oh yeah, there was some like Friday the 13th style movie on IFC the other night. I was gonna tell you about it." He's like, "I wrote down the name so because I know you like that kind of stuff. It's called The Burning, and it has George from Seinfeld in it." And I just started laughing. I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I have to watch this." And this was back before you could um like stream any movie you wanted to. And I ended up buying a DVD of it. It was like soon as they released it, I bought the DVD, and I ended up falling in love with the movie. So it was a good thing. It's like happenstance, I guess. My dad just ended up stumbling across this movie, wrote down the name for me so I could see what it was. And yeah, it's just one of my favorite slashers from the 80s. Really well done, and I always just love camp slashers. Like if it's a slasher movie from the 80s and it's based in a camp, I'm probably gonna at least watch it and enjoy it. I mean, there's a few that are pretty bad, like Don't Go in the Woods is pretty bad, but I don't. The whole running through the woods from a killer thing is always just my favorite. I always enjoy it. Now to my grading scale. You guys know how my grading scale goes by now. This one scores really high. I mean, no surprise there. So I always grade with effects, acting, plot, the ending, the killer, the kills, and the replay value. Like I said, this movie scored really high. The special effects I gave a 9 because I mean it's Savini. You can't really ask for much better. The acting, it gets a 7 from me. I mean, you get like Jason Alexander, he's great in it. The main guy, who I keep forgetting what his character's name is. I keep wanting to call him Brian, but I know that's not it. He's really great in it. He's like a really likable guy. Some even like the minor characters and like some of the guys who have like medium roles, like Woodstock, Fisher Stevens. It's obvious that he had talent and he went on to like do many things. So really impressed with him in this. The plot is a 7. Like I said, anytime there's a camp slasher, I'm there for it. It might not be the most original idea, but it's still really fun and enjoyable. The ending for me gets a 7. I love like the axe to the face is so brutal, and it just the way it hits is really like intense. I love that. The killer I gave a 10. I really like the looks of Cropsy, which is funny because I know Savini doesn't like the looks of him. And he did the Cropsy makeup. He created it all in 3 days. So I feel like he just doesn't like it because he didn't get to spend the amount of time that he normally does with it. But I think it looks really creepy. He looks really much like a burn victim more than Freddy Krueger does. The kills I gave a 9. That whole raft scene is incredible. It's one of the best slasher movie scenes ever. The replay value I give a 9 also because I've seen this movie so many times and I always enjoy it every single time I watch it. So the total comes out to an 8.3, which is definitely in the top probably 10% of slasher movies that I have listed. Someday I need to do like a video of just like my top 10 highest rated slasher films just to give you guys an idea of what this list entails and what's on it. But in conclusion, if you guys haven't seen this movie, then I definitely recommend it. It's fun. It's got enough gore to keep you interested. It builds the characters. You know, it might be a little slow at times, but there's things that do pay off in it. The ending's great. The killer's great. It's just got so many things going for it in this movie that, you know, that's why it gets that 8.3 for me. So if you guys are enjoying the show, please like, subscribe, and share it. I appreciate all the love I'm getting here, and I'm really enjoying doing this show. It's always fun to go back and revisit these ones that I've seen 100 times, like The Burning. And I just kind of, at the last second, I decide what I'm going to watch and just kind of roll with it. So have no idea what I'm doing next week, but stay tuned and we'll get to it. And until then, as always, be kind and rewind.